Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are doing our seventh welcome webinar, where we're going to be talking about supporting your student. My name is DePaul Straub. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I am the assistant director here for New Student and Transition Services, and have the pleasure of helping to facilitate this webinar today. So, we are going to jump right on in. For those of you joining us, this one is a little bit different than the webinars that we have done previously. We will kind of, this is going to be a lot more interactive than our typical webinars. It's really to get you all thinking about how you can support your student from afar and encourage their independence during their time in college. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over and we'll go ahead and get started. So I will introduce Derek.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Derek Morgan, he and pronouns. I serve as the Dean of Students and I oversee sort of the well-being areas of campus, counseling center, health center, student outreach and support, whatnot. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, but I've been here at the School of Mines for 23 years. And I have a daughter that's in college who's starting her sophomore year of college and a son that's at Golden High School, also starting his sophomore year. So glad you're with us tonight, and I'll turn it over to Colin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colin Terry. I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Life. This is my 17th year at Mines. I've been here a long time. And in my role, I oversee a myriad of different offices that will support your students from the Career Center to Disability Support Services to scholarships and study abroad, as well as our advising office. Happy to be here. And I'm going to pass it over to Sheena now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sheena Martinez, she, her pronouns. I serve as the Assistant Vice President of Student Life for Student Engagement. So as my title suggests, I'm working with our programs that engage students mostly outside of the classroom, but we do have some other work that's being done inside the classroom, New Student and Transition Services being one of those areas that falls within my oversight. And before we get started, we'd love to just get a sense of where you all are coming from. So if you have a chance, if you could just pop that in the chat, we'd love to just get a sense of where folks are coming from, where your students will be coming from. Myself, I am from Colorado and I've now been at Mines for just about 4.5 years now. So looks like we have a great mix of folks. I see Texas popping up a couple times, lots of folks from Colorado, Japan, wonderful, lots of California, some Washington, Maryland. Keep putting that in there. It's wonderful to have you all joining us this afternoon. So to kick us off, I want to just start by saying congratulations to you all. We know that getting into Mines is it's a huge accomplishment for students, and it's a huge accomplishment for you all as well. We know that your students are here not only as a result of their hard work, but also from the guidance and support that they've received from you all throughout their educational careers. So thank you for all that you all have done to help get your students here. I'll start first with talking a little bit about our approach and our commitment. And so part of why we do this webinar is because we really do want to be explicit in the fact that we want to be partnering with parents and families while your students are progressing through their time here at Mines. We want for the experience for your students to be new and exciting and illuminating. And in that, we know that support is really going to be an important factor. And so we'll be spending a lot of time talking about what that support looks like, what that partnership looks like, and talking through some different scenarios to help you all situate yourselves and think about how you can approach these different scenarios and different conversations with your students. A big part of what we talk to our students about and we know is essential in their experience is that part of how they are going to learn is through mistakes. through reflecting on both their mistakes and their successes and hard work. We know Mines is a rigorous institution. It is going to take hard work. It's going to take some trial and error for students. And again, so really thinking about how we help to position them well, so their experience both inside and outside of the classroom is one that allows for them to learn and reflect and grow and ultimately be ready for their next step after college to whatever that might be for them. So again, our session today is going to consist of talking about the many supports and services that we have here on campus. We want to have just a really honest conversation about the responsibilities that we each hold. So as students, as parents, and as the institution, we all play a role in ensuring the success of your students. So we'll talk about those roles. And again, we're going to go through a number of scenarios to kind of help kickstart that conversation. So again, partnerships, talked about that already, but we know that the most successful partnerships are ones that include, again, students, the families, and the institution. We talk a lot within student affairs about this extremely simple theory, but it's probably one of my favorites, and it's challenge and support. And so this idea being that you want to have the right balance of challenge and support. If you have too much challenge and not enough support, students will feel overwhelmed. If you have too much support and not enough challenge, students may not be learning in the ways that we want them to learn and grow. And so we think a lot about that, especially as we think about ideas of emerging adulthood. We know previously it used to be thought that at 18 years old, people were full-grown adults, and we know now that frontal lobe is still developing. And so that's important as we think about the ways our students are positioned when they come into campus and how they're developing through the different experiences. So we'll touch on that a little bit throughout as well. One of the big differences that will be important for you all, and again, as we're thinking about these scenarios and walking through them, is that the experience for your students in college will absolutely look different than the experience that they have in high school and that relationship that you have to the institution. For those of you who already have students in college and you've seen that transition, you likely already know things like FERPA, attendance, grades, the ways that your students are engaging. Though that information may not be known to you in the same way. And so we want to talk through how you can suss out that information through engagement with your students and how you actively stay connected in ways that make sense for you and your students. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, but want to make sure that you all are ready for that difference. And then finally, the one thing that, again, as we think about this partnership is that it's never solely on the student, never solely on the college. If your student is feeling confused, lost, if they're struggling in any kind of way, we are always available to engage, to assist, to support, to provide the services that your student may need. So it's important, again, as we think about that partnership, that we are also in close communication. So there may be instances where we know that a student is struggling, parents may not, or vice versa. A parent may know that a student is struggling. And so that opportunity to communicate and to figure out how we provide students with resources is really important. And so also helping your students to understand how to advocate for themselves, how to ask for the assistance that they need. And then to be able to then utilize those resources is going to be an important part of this. So we want to make sure that you all are prepared to engage your students in that process as well. So as we move into the next slide, we're going to go through 3 different scenarios. It is likely that your student will go through some sort of similar scenario, if not the exact scenario. There will be touch points in here that are going to be, I think, valuable for all of you as your students kind of begin to transition into their time here at Mines. And so again, as we think about what that appropriate level of support is, we'll talk through a little bit of that. And that will look different for each of your students based off of kind of where they are and where they're coming in. So we want to talk through a little bit about like what resources might be helpful, what approach is best, how do you positively message things, especially when your student may not be feeling the most positive about their experience. We want for students to really feel empowered, and so helping them to think through what their responsibility is, and then thinking through what your role is as a parent, and talking through that as well. So let's jump into the first scenario. And so we are going to ask again for you all to participate in the chat. Thank you for continuing to jump in with the likes and the hearts and all of those good things as you continue to kind of post where you all are coming from. But this first scenario is related to social connections. And we know that this is an important one for students. The ways in which they engage outside of the classroom is really important to their engagement and their success as a student on campus. And so the community that they build is extremely important. So in this first scenario, you talk to your student and they mention they are having a hard time making friends on campus. They admit they spend most of their free time on social media, which makes them feel like everyone else already has a perfect social group. What do you do? So I'm going to have DePaul jump to the next slide. And what we want, again, for you to think about is what resources may be helpful, what positive messaging and or approach is best, what is the student's responsibility, and how can parents or guardians positively engage? So I'm going to let you all take a couple of seconds to think through. If you have a response for any one of these questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat, and let's start to kind of read through what folks are kind of thinking through in this specific scenario as we think about our students. We want them to build those connections. We know that social media or any other kind of form of ways that folks might engage that keep them from that social connections. What are some ideas that you all are thinking of that may be helpful in this scenario? And I'll go ahead and put those in the chat. Look at the club and organizations to get involved in. Ask if they've joined any clubs. 100%. We have over 200 clubs and organizations, and lots more to come if students are interested in them. Talk to roommate, intramurals, connection to school clubs. Yes, we know in addition to clubs and organizations, connections with roommates are awesome opportunities. Students hopefully have already had the opportunity to begin to engage with their roommates. So that's a great way to connect. Invite your roommate to go to a club or organization meeting. Get off your phone and physically talk to people. Yes, that's a wonderful one. And that can sometimes feel very hard for our students. And so again, buddying up with other folks is a great way to help take some of the fear out of that. Let's see, join 3 student organizations. Yes, we have a program at the start of the year called Celebration of Minds, where all of the clubs and organizations go out and table on the intramural fields, and it gives students an opportunity to really jump in and kind of see what's out there and what's available to get involved in, so they can really start to kind of dip their toes in it. Use playground manners. Hi, my name is, what's yours? I love that, right? Like go back to the basics and make it really simple. Okay, bake cookies. That's a good one. People like food. The residence halls are a really good place too. So I've seen that mentioned a couple times specific to your roommates, but RAs are also an excellent resource for folks. If students are having any kind of challenges getting involved, RAs are a good way to kind of figure out what else is happening, not just on the floor or in the residence hall, but to help to connect. They can also serve as a buddy to, again, kind of make things feel a little bit more approachable. So you've got kind of built-in resources already from day one as folks move in. We've already talked about student activities. The SAIL office, student activities involvement and leadership, has, again, over 200 clubs and organizations. So this idea of encouraging them to enter spaces where they'll meet people And doing it in a way, right, when our first year students are here, everybody's in the same place. And so I think that's a good reminder to tell your students that all the other first year students are looking to make those connections. And so helping them to think about how they can authentically engage in those spaces, whether they feel super confident or not, but reminding them that everyone is in that place. There is a list of clubs and organizations on the SAIL website, and those are all listed in the Blaster book, and DePaul can talk a little bit more about that. We also have a multicultural engineering program that has professional-based organizations within them. Also, professional-based organizations exist within the academic department. So if folks are interested in any kind of area, whether it be aerospace or identity-based or professional organizations, those are all available to the students. Other things like undergraduate research are available. So regardless of what your student is interested in, those things will be available to them here. This idea of being honest and confessing feelings to another student to let them know that they are not alone. I think this is a good strategy, and it may come up in other scenarios, but we do know that because our students here at Mines are so high achieving, sometimes it's really hard for them to say, I'm struggling, or to ask for the resources that they need. So really encouraging your student to do that is just a good approach across the board. So let's jump to the next slide. So here's some questions for you to think about that may be good questions to chat with your student on the drive here, or that you might be able to use to kind of engage them and to figure out what is the plan for chatting and making sure and checking in with them. So if it's a call every Sunday afternoon to check in on how things are going, that question about how often do you want me to check in with you, those types of touch points, so you can make sure that you understand what's happening with your student, but you're also kind of giving them the flexibility and helping them think about the resources that they need to be able to effectively navigate a situation or scenario like this. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Colin to get us going on the next scenario.
Thanks, Sheena. Great job. I'm going to cut my video just because I'm getting some internet of a storm that's actually outside my window right now. So I will hopefully be coming through audio wise and you can hear me. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the engagement on the chat and in the Q&A. You might see Derek or DePaul and now Sheena typing feverishly away, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to just engage with you all kind of simultaneously to presenting. We start with the social connection like Sheena did for good reason. We find that that is so fundamental. And when that social connection is not fully developed, it's struggling, a lot of maybe more unsavory things can come out of that, right? Some isolation, feeling alone, and also often their academics can be impacted. You might think, man, this seems like it's the most important point. They're here to go to school, but we really do first because that community can be an incredible supportive group. And in fact, the stronger their community that they will build organically, the better in many ways, including their academics. So here's the scenario we've brought for academics. You're the parent or the guardian. It's the end of September. You're talking to your student on the phone. You're obviously talking about classes, and they mentioned that they're feeling a bit overwhelmed. Midterms are quickly approaching. Maybe they recently got a C on an exam, their first not A. Maybe it was even worse than a C. And in high school, your student performed really well. You didn't see them study nearly as much as you would have maybe assumed, or you saw their peers. And things came naturally to them. We hear this a lot from parents and students. But now you're hearing at the end of September that they seem to be struggling a bit more with work and with the adjustment. This is a very common scenario. So what do you do? DePaul, if you want to move on to the next page. let's, again, like we did in the previous scenario, kind of learn from one another by engaging in the chat. What are the resources that may be helpful, and how can you show up in that conversation for your student? Um, Reminding them that it is an adjustment, that it is going to be harder. Maybe they're not in the top 20 because we just selected the top 20%. Absolutely. Normalizing it. And, lo and behold, at Mines and nationally, the first semester tends to be maybe the biggest challenge from an academic perspective. And often that's reflected in the earned GPA that term. So normalize. This is normal. This is why you chose Mines. It's a hard school. And also, you're fully capable of doing really well. So, what do we do about it? How can we help? Office hours, such a phenomenal recommendation. Every professor at Mines is required to have open and available office hours where they're literally sitting there and they are waiting for students to come by with questions pertaining to homework, pertaining to lecture. Excellent recommendation with office hours. Absolutely. Groups, so important. I will tell you right now, Mines is a team sport. Engineering may have gone about it alone before. That will not work at Mines. I have found very few students over the years that tell them to start working with their peers. They will be an asset to their peers, and their peers will be an asset to them. Absolutely. We have robust academic support services throughout the institution, whether it's a centralized tutoring service, specific recitation. They need to lean in and take advantage of that. Those are not services for remedial assistance. Those are services that will make the difference in how they perform, and they're very heavily utilized. If they're struggling, reach out to the professor. Absolutely. Lo and behold, guess what? It's no secret to the professor if the student is earning poorer grades or wants to be doing better. The professor probably knows it, and guarantee the professor's heard it before. That professor will likely partner with your student and maybe review the exam and look for patterns into where they struggled, or maybe some explanation as to why they struggled. Absolutely. Wendy Johnson, so appreciate you noting the withdrawal deadlines. That first term can be difficult, absolutely. And for some students, the best thing is consider in consultation with their advisor, maybe withdrawing from a class so that they don't try and take too large of a schedule. Or if things have gone poorly, maybe 2 exams went poorly and they're just now beginning to kind of figure out what it means to study. That's okay. They can recover. Students can, and even, our best and brightest, if you want to call them that, though every one of our students really is that. Every student at Mines will withdraw for good reason at some point. Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, I love, we believe in you. What support do you need from me? Why do I love that? Because you're not coming with all the answers per se. You're just kind of welcoming the conversation and asking them, right? A classic, wonderful way to show up for your student. The 3 H's, right? Do you want me to help? Do you want me to hear you? Do you want me to hug you? And sometimes students don't really need your help. Sometimes they just need to feel heard. Sometimes, right? So show up and attune to what they're looking for from you. That will put you two in a good position to continue to talk about their academic struggles. Love that. Love that. Give yourself grace, go to the office hours, seek the services. Perfect. Perfect. Now, let me ask this. What's your student's responsibility, and how do you remind them that at the end of the day, they may have the horsepower that's necessary to do well at Mines. I guarantee they do from a cognitive sense, but they still got to put in the time. How do you help them remember what's their responsibility? The 3 H's is do you want me to hug you? Do you want me to hear you? Do you want me to help you? And generally speaking, when we reach out to somebody for support, uh, we only really usually want one of those. So sometimes it's even good to ask, do you want me to hug you? Obviously, that's hard to do if you're not in the same room. Do you want me to hear you? Do you want me to help you? Ask them what they've been doing. Ask them what they can do differently. So we work with a lot of students who are struggling, and we try and break it down like a calculation. You approached this last exam in this way, it didn't work out. How should we approach the next exam? What could you have maybe done differently? What did you see some of your peers do? We maybe learn from your professor. Are you attending office hours? Are you doing the homework? Minds will benefit the student if they do it. And when I say that is learn the material, but it will benefit their grade. But if they don't do the homework, it won't be detrimental. And the kicker there is that a lot of students and think, well, maybe I don't need to do this homework because if I pass on a couple and just forego the commitment, lo and behold, it will ultimately maybe hurt their learning. Yeah. Don't wait until they're overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, Courtney, such a phenomenal recommendation. This is what we see so often, the student that finally asks for help and really the damage is done. So make sure to kind of have them engage and react, if you will, in a positive, healthy way early and ask for help early. Excellent, excellent. The other thing too, and I'll just mention this, such great recommendations in the chat. The best thing you can do as a parent and guardian, again, that normalizing, that hearing, and remind them that they're students, right? They're not the teacher. They're actually here to learn, and learning is a process that takes time and effort. They're fully capable of doing it, right? They're absolutely get across the U.S., right? It is fully capable of driving all the way across the U.S., but it still takes time. That's the biggest thing that a lot of our students maybe underestimate is the time that's necessary to just get through the material. They may be quick, they may be even quicker than most of their peers, but it still takes time. All right, DePaul, if you wouldn't mind advancing the slide. These are some great tips if you want to talk to your students about what are the strategies you're going to use to stay organized. Great conversation piece to have over the summer, and maybe even purchase some of those basic office supplies that'll help them. It's amazing how many students show up without a calendar or without any kind of planner. How are you going to establish your study schedule? How are you going to dedicate schoolwork and studying? If you don't do well on a test, what would you do? Do you know where the tutoring services are? Can we look at them now and see where they are on the map, the campus map? What would maybe, can we template an effective outreach to your professors? We try and instill a bunch of this in the first year symposium course that all of your students will take. For example, the students are required to actually create a kind of a week by week guide of not only when their classes are, but when the office hours are for their professors, so they can just reference it, right? You want to make this easy and accessible in the moment that the student realizes that things need to improve. They've already thought through a few of these strategies. Excellent. Thank you for the participation there. Those were great recommendations. Wonderful job. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Dean Morgan next, and he's going to talk about some health and support.
Thanks, Colin. And thanks everybody for your wonderful answers. I just want to harken back to something Sheena talked about earlier, and it's the challenge and support piece. Your son or daughter are going to experience a wonderful college environment. Mine's is great, but it's also a super big challenge. So they're leaving a support structure, friends, all that, and coming to a new place, which is amazing in a lot of ways, but also very scary. And your son or daughter may not have ever even asked for help. They may never had even figured that out, that they needed help. They were the ones that everybody came to for help. And so this is a new place. And so they're going to have lots and lots of challenges, and that's okay. As was mentioned earlier, just be there to support them, send them a care package, check in with them, encourage them to do those things you've put in the chat, and it'll be great. So this last scenario we have for you is about health and well-being. So let's just get into this. It's been about a month since you dropped off your student at Mines. You have been talking with your student, and they mentioned they're extremely homesick, been skipping classes, and sleeping more than normal. What do you do? If you bring up that next slide, DePaul, these are some questions, the same questions that we've had for the last two. And actually, some of the advice you provided on the last two would help in this situation as well. But go ahead and put in the chat what resources might be helpful in this situation, what messages, what's the student's responsibility, how can you support? Yeah, that's great. Those H's are wonderful. The health center is another H. Student health, behavioral health, mental health. Conversations about routine, sleep, exercise. That's wonderful. Tiana, I love the idea of getting outside and moving. We know that physical activity is so helpful to mental health. So yeah, that's great. What are we eating? Yeah, that's going to probably change from what they ate at home to what they're eating in our dining hall. When they're making all the choices about what they eat, sometimes they don't make the best choices. Really pushing them to think about what's the answer, right? Instead of giving them the answer, challenging them to think about what it is that they can do. The mental health piece and homesickness and all that's pretty real. We see a lot of what's called imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've heard of that, where the students feel like everybody else is better than them. It was a mistake. They got admitted here. That is not true. Everybody isn't better than them. It isn't a mistake that they got here. It just sometimes feels that way because we don't talk about everything that's going on in our world. So some of the advice from earlier about being honest and sharing your thoughts and feelings, talk about your struggles, those are all really, really important. We have so many resources on campus, both in the health and well-being area, but also in academic support, social support, all those different things. Unfortunately, we're not knocking on their door every day, reminding them to do those things, but so many resources are available. And a just student needs to let us know what's going on. I'll start with, we do have a robust health center. It's sort of like an urgent care, can help students with some basic medical issues if they want to be checked out. We also have 11 counselors on staff, so students looking to meet with somebody to talk about what's going on. They may have their own therapist. At home, and I can ask you to continue to have that person see them. Don't try to make any more changes than necessary with that. But definitely we have a staff here that's willing to help out and meet with students. We also have an office called the Student Outreach and Support Office, SOS. And this is a group of staff members. There's 5 of them in the office that do outreach whenever we get referrals. So a parent, a faculty member, a friend, a student can self-report. And that referral comes to the office, and then those staff reach out and try to get the student, learn more about what's going on in the student's life and connect them with various resources on campus. There's so many resources, and that the SOS office is a good one-stop shop to get your son or daughter connected to the different resources here. So I'd encourage you to pay attention to that. And utilize those resources. Again, lots of things here. I love what I'm seeing, again, about getting outside, going for a walk, taking a break. It's going to be pretty heavy science, math, engineering. And so the clubs and organizations that Sheena talked about, those are all great. The campus recreation opportunities, those are all great. Just taking a break and doing something different than science and engineering is super important. We think about a lot of our students before they came here when they're in high school. They had many, many, many talents. whether it's music, theater, sports, whatever it may be, that sometimes get neglected when they come to college. And so we want them to still utilize those things and get outside, play the guitar, whatever it is they do, just to take a break from some of the engineering stuff. So Paul, if you'll go to the next slide. Yeah, these are some questions, again, similar to the other scenarios that you can chat with them between now and coming to school. But how do you plan to relax and reduce your stress levels? Super important. It's going to be stressful. They're going to feel that stress. So talking about what they're going to do. What's their plan if they get sick? Do they know their medical history? Can they share that with a provider? Maybe you've always provided that in the past, but do they know what's going on? Do they know how to make an appointment at the health center or get to the local urgent care? Talk about substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, whatever that. How are they going to manage those risks? If they want to say no, what does that look like? And then how do they reach out when they start to feel overwhelmed? Again, there's probably going to be something during this first year that really challenges them, whether it's a grade they get, a roommate issue, club or organization thing, whatever it may be. There's probably going to be some challenge. They'll figure it out and they'll get through it. Just remind them that they've been through harder things, and they'll get through this too. But again, getting them to realize and ask for help is really critical. I think when you talk to our older students, they often talk about the importance of asking for help, and that this is not an individual program, and we need each other to get through. And so, and as soon as they figure that out, life gets a lot better here at Minds. So, yeah, but great ideas in the chat. Thanks for sharing those. What we want to do now, if you go to the next slide, DePaul, is just share some tips with you that we've cultivated as well from our own experience, as well as from what other parents have shared in the past. And so the first is to communicate about communication. If you have expectations about how much you are wanting to hear from them, please share that so they know. And also get an understanding of how much they want you communicating with them. It's so easy to communicate, whether it's text message, but maybe you want to set up a weekly Teams call or video call, FaceTime, whatever. So, but talk about that, kind of figure out what it is that you all want to do around communication. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but keep medications, support, access going. So if a student is taking a medication or getting accommodations or meeting with a therapist currently, this is not the time to change that. So keep that going and continue that process, because that's a great form of support for the student and doesn't need to change with everything else that's changing. Next is ask less about the outcome and more about the process. So don't ask what they got on an exam. Ask what they learned from the curriculum. Ask what classes they're enjoying the most. What are they learning? But I think when we get specific about grades or GPA, or that makes them feel not great. So really talk about the journey, not the destination. Really utilize that Blaster book and the Ordiger family portal. There's lots of great information in there, important phone numbers, important dates, lots and lots of things. So if you're not utilizing those, please utilize those right now. And then I talked about the Student Outreach and Support System, the SOS office. That is a great resource and a good first stop if the student's ever feeling like they don't know what to do. Even if they need help, go in and talk to a faculty member, because that can be intimidating the first time you have to do that. Colin, do you want to take these last few?
Yeah, you bet. Great job, Derek. Thank you. Failure will happen. That might be hard for you to believe, but I will tell you, we've been to enough graduation ceremonies, even with the 4.0 student who will say, I remember when I failed my first exam. I remember when I failed a friend and let them down, right? Failure happens academically and also personally. That'll happen. Sometimes the greatest opportunities for growth and self-learning comes about from that failure. The hardest part of that, and we meet with enough students that we can tell you um, that it makes a big difference when the students know their parents, their guardian still believes in them, still sees the best in them, still knows the failure doesn't define them. When we meet with students who are afraid about disappointing their parents, are afraid that their parents will not appreciate the context of the failure, maybe just the poor choice they made as a college student, which, by the way, happens, that makes it even harder. So happen, period. Your job as a parent is to believe in them, see the best in them, and try. They are adults at this point, and so hopefully you can really help them um, move beyond. Prioritize that community and that engagement on campus. We talked about it, but it is so foundational to the academic, to the personal well-being. I'm back. The storm. All right, just really prioritize community engagement. It's critically important, and there's so many ways to do it at Minds. It's really, really, really phenomenal. Students should self-advocate. They need to seek the support, and this is a hard reality about life. But if I'm at home and I'm cooking and I cut myself with a kitchen knife, nobody's going to know that I need help. So I tell a lot of parents this, and I will share it with you all. They need to self-advocate. They don't need to self-fix. It's our responsibility to respond. It's our responsibility to support. It's our responsibility to do everything we can to know there's a need, that they have got to tell you, tell us, tell someone there's a need. That is critically, critically, critically important. We won't always know. Sometimes we do. And by way of the SOS form and what Derek's talked about, sometimes we're able to put together enough data points, whether it's from you or from friends or from maybe a professor, that the student is in need. But the best and most fail-safe way to help a student is by encouraging them to ask for help. It is hugely important. Last thing I'm just going to mention is the importance of tests, homework, and labs. We put it out there because all of those are important. Lo and behold, a lot of students just focus on the tests, and for good reason, right? They're scary, they're daunting, they're big, but doing the homework, doing the labs, as I mentioned earlier, not only helps you master the content, but often the first and second year, the classes are structured in such a way that if they routinely do the homework and the labs, they can benefit their overall course grade by a substantial amount. It is usually quite unappreciated. So if the student says, man, I wish there was really something I could do to help my grades. Well, performance on a test is a lot more difficult than just putting in the work, sitting with some friends, going to the tutoring center, and getting your homework done. Encourage them to do that too. All right, those are kind of our best tips, and the chat continues on. DePaul, if you'd like to advance, I'm going to hand it back to Sheena, who's been our overall MC this event.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. It looks like we do have some lingering questions. DePaul, did any questions come in the Q&A that we want to get to? It does look like there maybe were some, I saw mental health services, so maybe some additional questions about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw that one in chat, and I saw somebody had also asked about how do we contact SOS, but then I ended up finding it. But it still might be helpful just to talk about if y'all can talk about how do students or families go about contacting SOS.
Yeah, the easiest thing is just through the SOS website. Carrot Minds or SOS at Minds. Either of those will get you there. And there's a referral page, link to a referral page right there where you can put in information, who you're concerned about, and they'll do outreach. You can also call the office, but the easiest way is just to submit that referral through the website. And then the question about the providers, our mental health providers on campus share information about their services to the students. Yes, definitely. There'll be opportunities during Hello Welcome, also during the CSM 101 class. The students will also take a CSM 202 class in their second or third term, where again, cover a lot of that information. Because sometimes they hear it that first semester and they're not in a place of crisis or needing help. And so the reminder later on is super important as well. Sometimes there's so many other things they're thinking about those first few weeks, that the reminder during 202 is great.
DePaul, we have a request to go back to the talk to your student about for the social support
Yeah.
section. Can
Let
you click
me,
back through there?
yeah, let me see what I can do for you. Let's see, health and well-being. There we go.
There we are. Other questions that are coming up?
I'll just say you all are gonna do great. If the advice that you shared in the chat is anything to show, like you're gonna be amazing. Great support for your son or daughter. They may not call home enough. They may disappoint you at times. That's okay. They're gonna do just fine. I know it'll be different, but they'll have a great experience, and you're well prepared. As hard as it may be, having just sent my daughter to college a year ago, you'll be great. No doubt about it.
If I can, before we wrap up, I'm gonna put the three of you on the spot, if that's okay. And I'm gonna ask you if you, just as kind of a wrap up, could share kind of like what is your like top one or two tips? I know you went through kind of like your list collectively, but in your experience working with families and students, what are your like personal like this is what I would think about or prepare for, or my best tip for kind of navigating minds?
Uh,
Best.
I
Go
think
ahead.
I'll start. I think that, again, I mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of pressure on students who come to Minds, right? They're some of the smartest students in their school. There's a lot of expectations that are built up from probably a variety of places, whether it's their own expectations, family expectations, what they assume the expectations might be of the institution. But I think the more authentically a student can show up, um, the better the experience will be for them. And that includes all of the things that we've talked about here, being able to ask for help, being able to name when they're maybe feeling in crisis or when they're feeling disconnected. Um, I know several of you talked about normalizing those things. And so the more that we are able to help to normalize those things, and again, we are partners in that. So we will also be doing that. Again, Derek mentioned Hello Welcome, CSM 101, CSM 202. There's a number of resources where we will be talking to your students about these things. But your student will struggle more if they are not able to dig into some of those realities for them. The more they're able to talk about those things and to reach out for support through the variety of resources, the more successful that they are going to be in all aspects of their experience here, socially, academically, engagement in their professional development as they prepare for kind of the next steps and stages in their life post-college. So I think really encouraging your student to show up in the ways that feel feel authentic to who they are, is just it, and that's good life advice too, just being able um, to ask for what you need and to advocate as you recognize those things coming up. So really encouraging them to lean into that, I think, is important.
Yeah, I think I go back to something I said earlier about the journey. Really, probe them about what they like the most, what class excites them. Um, how do they feel like their learning is going? Um, talk about friends and experiences they've had each week, instead of the grades and what's your major and all that. I think that they're coming from being the smartest kid or one of the smartest kids in their school to now being, for most of our students, still a really good student, but not that top student. That's an identity hit for some of them. And so you bringing that up or questioning them why they aren't performing the same way they did in high school, that's not good. So somebody asked the question about what do we wish they did less, parents did less of. Maybe that would be it for me is, um, comparing them to their high school self. It's a new experience, a new opportunity. There's going to be some things that you're like, why are they doing that? That's odd or that's weird. But trust them. They've made good decisions their whole life that got them to this point. And so continue to support them. Don't solve the everything for them. Uh, Somebody had put in the chat earlier about celebrate the struggle. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't want them struggling all the time, but some struggle is good, right? Some struggle is important for them, and for them to figure out what it takes to get through that instead of always having somebody give them the answers. That's how it's going to be in the classroom as well. Like the faculty, it's different than in high school. They're not going to give them the answers. They're going to teach them how to think, how to process, how to take information and find solutions. Um, and so you having them do that outside the classroom is wonderful as well.
So all that just two quick thoughts, and there's so much great advice and knowledge in the chat, but mine are pretty basic. So really simple. Have it maybe even pre-planned when you're going to visit if you're not local before you have move in. I think you'll be surprised if your student doesn't talk to you a lot now, it's going to change. We hear from parents all the time, like my kid would never even return a phone call or text, and now I hear from them daily. Like, get ready. So have it planned when you're going to come visit. And when you come visit, whether you are local or not, invite their friends always. Go out to dinner, go out to brunch, bring three of their friends, and sit back and just watch, and super fun. The other thing I'll say, and maybe just honor so much of what's been said, just ask open-ended questions, and try not to have too much of an opinion. Just open-ended questions, not how was your day? Good. You know, tell me the most interesting thing you've learned this week, or um, do you think you've changed since you arrived in August or whatever? I mean, sometimes these are bigger questions, but road trips are a great way to do that. Um, I guess that's another one example is if you're not local and if you can drive to and from, do that. Derek just picked up his daughter first year of college. They road tripped back. I don't know, that must have been a 2 or 3 day road trip, but I bet you there was some pretty good dialogue in that car when you don't have to stare at one another and you can just chat and listen to music and kind of make it more casual. So open-ended questions and invitations to their friends, always. Pretty simple approach, I think, in many ways.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those. I really appreciate it. I think I'll add just kind of my quick one in there too. And I think you all have done a really great job in this session. I think we really talk about this a lot, but I think is that piece specifically around not doing everything for them. And I know that is very much a natural tendency for a lot of family members and parents. And that is something that is going to be hard to fight, but I think is something that I have seen has been really beneficial for students who have kind of had that. Certainly there's no like certainly guide them in the right direction, right? But kind of resisting that urge to like, oh, well, here's the website. Like, let me send you all the information or I'll fill out the form for you. Instead letting them do it, maybe guiding them in the right spot, but allowing them to kind of take ownership because at the end of the day, this is their experience in college, and setting them up to be successful post-college. So before we wrap up, I just want to thank our panelists so much for joining us and providing all this great information. And thank all of you for sharing your advice as well. I have a couple just little reminders before we wrap up for the day. So we have two more welcome webinars left in our series. So our next one is going to be for students only. And that is going to be next week on Monday at 4 o'clock. And that is going to be a panel with our current student leaders. So that is a great place for students to get any last minute questions that they want to get answered from students who have had a couple years here and that also work in our office. So that's a great opportunity. And then our final one will be, I believe, on August 4th, and that is going to be all around Hell of a Welcome and Move In. And so I know that that is a really popular one as well, especially as we get close to those big events. Hard to believe we're already a little less than a month out, but we are very, very excited. On that same note, make sure that your student is completing their Order Your Next Steps checklist in their admissions portal, and that they're checking their Minds email. Increasingly so, they will start getting more and more information in the weeks leading up to starting at Minds from not only our office, but a lot of other campus partners as well. And then the last piece that I would ask that you all do for me is at the end of this webinar, it should pop up with a web link that directs you to the survey for our welcome webinars. I believe it'll also be in the follow-up email tomorrow as well. But if you could just take the extra 3 to 4 minutes just to fill that out for us, we really do appreciate the feedback, especially for this session. And so we can continue to tailor this session to be most helpful for you all. So with that, again, I want to thank our panelists for being here, and certainly please reach out if there's anything we can help with. And we're excited to see you all on campus with your students in just a few short weeks. But in the meantime, if there's anything else we can help with, let us know. Thanks so much for being here, everybody.